The last days of May seemed to cast a tense atmosphere over Genoa City, as secrets that had been buried for 2 decades suddenly rise to the surface, threatening to overturn everything Diane had tried to rebuild after years of being lost. The truth about Audra is not just a normal shock, but a horror that Diane is about to face, as the scar on Audra's arm is a cruel reminder of the past that she tried to bury deep into oblivion. Diane could not have imagined that the woman who had always confronted, challenged, and made her feel out of control in recent months was her own daughter, the child she thought had disappeared forever into the arms of fate. In the cold villa, Diane sat silently facing the old yellowed photo, her trembling hand touching the dusty glass surface. Memories of her youth, of the tearful moment when she was forced to give up her newborn daughter for painful reasons, came flooding back like a tidal wave. The scar on that arm, a mark that Diane could never forget, now appeared on the arm of Audra, the strong, resourceful woman she had always been wary of. It was an indelible memory, a cruel testament to separation. This truth was too much to bear, making Diane want to deny it, but her mind and heart did not allow her to turn her back on her own flesh and blood. Meanwhile, Audra was still busy on a hopeless journey to find her own origins, carrying within her a desire to know who her biological parents were. The years of growing up in an orphanage had tempered Audra into a tough, cold woman towards the world, but extremely yearning for the warmth of family. Audra never stopped yearning for a real home, for the feeling of being called a child by someone with affection. It was her orphaned past, lacking love, that made Audra develop great ambitions, always wanting to conquer, wanting to prove herself to everyone, especially to Kyle, the man she saw as a ticket to power and fame in a world where she never felt she belonged. Audra became more and more attractive in Kyle's eyes, not only because of her sharp intelligence, but also because of her cold mystery and something very similar to Diane, who once strongly influenced Kyle's life. But to Audra, Kyle was just part of a much larger plan, a plan to prove to the world that she was no longer a poor orphan, but a woman capable of rising to the pinnacle of power. Audra was willing to use everything she had, including her emotions and charm, to achieve her goal. However, deep inside Audra's soul, there is still a void, a wound that will never heal from the pain of being abandoned since birth. Diane is faced with the most difficult choice of her life. Should she face the truth and admit that Audra is her lost daughter, or continue to hide, keeping the secret as a shield to protect both of them from further pain? The fear of losing everything, Jack's love, Kyle's trust, the position Diane has built with great difficulty in Genoa City's high society. Mixed with the torment of a mother who has been thinking about her lost daughter for 20 years, creating a storm tearing at Diane's heart. She knows that once the truth is revealed, not only Audra but everyone around her will be caught up in the vortex of the past, of tears and regret. During the long sleepless nights, Diane kept wondering if she would have the courage to face her daughter after all these years without a word, if she could hold Audra in her arms without letting tears engulf both of them. Diane imagined a series of scenarios. Maybe Audra would hate her, would think she was selfish, would hate the mother who abandoned her in the cold orphanage that day. But also, maybe Audra would understand, would forgive, or at least give Diane a chance to hold her own child again, even if it was too late. Those emotions kept rising, pushing Diane to the brink of confusion and helplessness. Meanwhile, Audra was still unaware of the great secret that fate had arranged for her. She focused all her energy on conquering Kyle's heart, trying to hide her true feelings behind the cold mask of a calculating person. Audra feels closer and closer to her destination, but at the same time she realizes that there is an invisible wall between her and Kyle, a wall that only the truth about her origin can break down. Audra could not have imagined that the answer to all the worries in her heart was so close, if Diane just had the courage to say it all. And then, fate finally forced the mother and daughter to face each other. A sudden moment in the office, when Diane accidentally saw Audra revealing the scar on her arm, all the memories rushed back, unable to be contained. Diane stood still, tears silently falling, and Audra was confused as to why the woman who had always been cold and harsh towards her suddenly changed her gaze. The truth gradually became clear through the choked tears, through the first trembling hug after 20 long years of separation. In that moment, the world seemed to stop, leaving only two women, a mother full of regret, a daughter surprised and in pain, facing each other amid the broken pieces of the past and the fragile hope of a healing future. The truth about the mother-daughter relationship between Diane and Audra quickly spread throughout the upper class of Genoa City, shocking everyone who knew them. Jack felt betrayed, Kyle fell into a state of utter confusion, and Audra had to face the biggest crisis of her life. The schemes and ambitions that had been built for so long collapsed in an instant, giving way to emptiness and loneliness. Audra did not know whether to be happy or to cry, to hate or to forgive. But deep down, Audra's heart still longed for a real family, a place to return to. She knew it would take her a long time to accept this truth, but at least she was no longer an orphan without roots. As for Diane, after everything that had happened, she finally found the courage to face the past, to atone for some of the mistakes of a lifetime. Although she knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that the wounds of the past would forever leave scars in her heart, Diane understood that only the truth could free both mother and daughter from the shackles of pain. And Genoa City, in the last week of May, witnessed a new undercurrent, a wave of secrets, tears, and the fragile hope that, however late, motherly love is still enough to heal all wounds. In the early summer days in Genoa City, amidst the warm yellow lights of the luxurious GCAC bar, the atmosphere seemed to be about to explode with the secrets, schemes and aspirations that were flowing underground in every beat of life. Audra Charles and Kyle Abbott appeared as an opposing couple, but were drawn together by a strange gravitational force, between the boundaries of emotions and personal ambitions. Next to them, a brown-haired girl who brought new color to the situation, contributing to evoking and stirring up the already tangled emotions inside both of them. That confrontation, in fact, was not just a normal argument about love, but also a showdown between egos, pride, and wounds that had not yet healed. Kyle, the heir to the famous Abbott family, had always lived in the shadow of his family. A large part of him was the desire to assert himself beyond the Abbott name, beyond all the assumptions people made about his position at Jabot. But at the same time, Kyle cannot escape the consequences of his status. He is not free to love, not free to choose his allies, and is not allowed to be weak in front of anyone, especially Audra. Audra Charles has long been an enigma that makes Genoa City wary. She is not simply a partner, an ex-lover, or a temporary pawn in the power game of Jabot and Newman. Behind her sharp eyes and mysterious smile is a woman who has suffered too much loss, grown up in a cold, unloving environment, and then built for herself a cold, challenging shell. For Audra, every relationship is a strategic move. Whether in love or work, she never allows herself to be passive, let alone let anyone control her destiny. The meeting at GCAC, which at first seemed like just a drinking session to relax like any other young people, was actually a tense battle of wits, where both Audra and Kyle knew that the other was not simply a drinking buddy. They knew that every word, every look could become a mental attack, a clue to exploit information, or even a trap to put the other at a disadvantage. The brunette girl sitting next to them was a silent witness, but also a catalyst for the silent conflicts between the two. Things became more complicated when Diane Abbott, Kyle's mother, despite always trying to prevent her son from getting involved in dangerous relationships, could not control Kyle's desire to assert himself. Diane knew who Audra was, understood the risks Kyle would face if he continued to play power games with a woman like Audra, but she herself was helpless when she saw her son increasingly drifting away from the family's safety, fiercely rushing into the games that she had experienced and paid dearly for. Kyle seemed to be driven by his mother's opposition. He no longer wanted to be the boy who was always under protection, he just wanted to prove to Diane and to Genoa City that he could decide his own destiny, no matter the cost. Seeing Audra again was not just a defiance, but also an opportunity for him to seek intelligence, to gain an advantage over her, as he had explained on Friday night, when he confided to himself that only by beating Audra at her own game could he truly escape the darkness she had cast into his life all this time. In that context, even though Kyle received warnings from Claire Newman, who was always quick to get information from Newman Ranch and warned that Audra had been summoned by Victor Newman to discuss strategy, that caution did not stop the flow of his ego and competitiveness. Kyle confidently believed that he could control this game, believing that he was in the same big league as Audra. But in reality, everyone in Genoa City understood that Kyle's position at Jabot was a gift of the Abbott name, a power inherited more than an achievement. Audra, with the keen instincts of someone who had struggled to survive, always took the initiative. She understood Kyle's every move, even knew what was going on at Jabot, and saw beyond what Victor Newman was planning. Besides, Audra constantly pushed the two-sided game. On one hand, she was seductive, getting close to Kyle to grasp the secrets of Jabot. The other side is the ability to negotiate, willing to compromise with Victor to achieve personal benefits. Although on the outside, Audra appears to be drawn to Kyle, in reality she is always at least 10 steps ahead of him, calculating every possibility, leaving herself a safe retreat when necessary. The conversation between the two in the GCAC Jazz Lounge lasted for hours, seemingly without end. The topics of cosmetics, corporate strategy, and overlapping relationships in the upper class, all were just a cover for a real battle of wits. Audra led Kyle with words that were both ambiguous and provocative, making him curious, wary, and frustrated, but unable to stop. Kyle knew what information Audra wanted to get, and also realized that he could only maintain balance by appearing unhesitant, ready to respond to any trick she threw at him. There were times when the tense atmosphere between them was temporarily dissolved by the gentle jazz music and light alcohol, but just a glance, a half-smile, all defenses were erected, and both sides drifted into a new game, romantic, dangerous, and calculating. The presence of the brunette, although initially seemingly just an outsider, was gradually drawn into that vortex. She clearly saw the cracks in the Kyle-Audra relationship, realizing that somewhere in that competition there were still remnants of old feelings, of things left unsaid. As the night wore on, the truth became more and more apparent that Kyle, despite his strength and confidence, was actually not really ready to confront an Audra who was eager to prove her position at both Newman and Jabot. Audra not only wanted to conquer Kyle's affection as a trophy, but also wanted to use that relationship as a springboard to go further in the never-ending power struggle in Genoa City. She accepted all risks, was ready to let go if she felt she could no longer achieve her goals, and that made Kyle even more confused, vulnerable and easily manipulated. However, Kyle was not someone who could be easily subdued. Beneath his ego and desire to assert himself, he still retains a part of his sanity, always alert to Audra's every word and gesture. He knows that if he lets his guard down for just a moment, all his achievements at Jabot, and even the future of the Abbott family, can collapse in the blink of an eye. Although he appears to be a carefree, fearless person, Kyle's heart is filled with countless conflicts, struggles between love, family obligations, and personal ambitions. That night, when leaving GCAC, each person carries their own feelings. Audra remains cold and unpredictable, satisfied that she still has the advantage, while Kyle, despite appearing confident on the outside, suddenly realizes that he has gone too far on the path to confronting Audra, possibly losing himself or even the most important things. The brunette watched silently, knowing that the real storm was just beginning, and what happened at GCAC tonight would be the beginning of a series of great changes to come in Genoa City, where love, ambition, and betrayal are always intertwined, never ending. Genoa City is going through a tense week, where every look, every word contains hidden feelings and unspoken calculations. In the luxurious but also haunted space of the Abbott mansion, the atmosphere is thick with vague premonitions of changes that are not only happening outside the ancient walls but also smoldering inside the hearts of each member of this powerful family. Kyle Abbott is facing a major turning point. He is the type of person born into luxury, inheriting the favor of the Abbott family, but always struggling between family expectations and the desire to prove his own worth. Recently, the appearance and heavy proposals of Audra Charles have made Kyle wonder endlessly. Audra is known as a shrewd woman, knows how to play with fire and is not afraid to bet both her career and her heart to achieve her goals. The offer she brought seemed to open up a new path of power for both of them, making Kyle unable to help but consider. However, it was Audra's intelligence that made Kyle more cautious than ever. He wondered if everything Audra presented was really a win-win or just a sophisticated, clever trap like the many times she had done before with her previous partners. Kyle understood that Audra was never someone who acted without careful calculation. To her, every relationship could become a weapon, and every promise could be a move. Perhaps that was why this time he decided to play Audra's role, using her own tactics to challenge her in return, waiting to see if Audra would realize or fall into his own trap. The game between Kyle and Audra was not simply about love or business cooperation. It is a game of wits where both know the other can stab them in the back at any moment if given the chance, but at the same time are attracted to each other's sharpness and recklessness. Kyle chooses to fall into this dangerous game not because he is naive or blinded by Audra's charm, but because deep inside he desires to master the game, to prove his mettle to Audra, to Jabot, to the Abbott family, and most importantly to himself. Outside of this tense game, Diane, Kyle's controversial mother, has very different worries. After years of trying to make up for her past mistakes, Diane thinks she has finally found a solid place in the Abbott family. Jack and Kyle's agreement with the plan to renovate the Abbott mansion is a small emotional victory for Diane. However, deep down in that satisfaction is the constant fear of threats that have yet to be revealed. Billy Abbott, conservative and nostalgic for old values, disagreed, even harshly criticizing Diane for changing her living space, erasing the memory of John Abbott, the founder of everything. Those words were like a sharp knife cutting into Diane's heart, reminding her that no matter how hard she tried, the past would always cling to her, and she never really belonged here. Every step Diane took in the Abbott mansion was a step between hope and fear being pushed aside. Her heart became more fragile when she was about to face Tracy and Ashley, two women who were very difficult to please in the Abbott house, who always gave her suspicious and strict looks whenever something changed in this house. The night before Tracy and Ashley returned, Diane could not sleep well. She walked around the newly renovated house, her hands lightly touching each wall, each new decoration, worried that her choices would be seen as betraying memories or trampling on tradition. Diane's mind ran through a series of scenarios. Would Tracy, who was gentle and understanding, sympathize with her desire to renew her living space, or would she speak up to reproach Diane for daring to touch sacred values? Would Ashley, with her strong personality, always upholding the Abbott family's right to self-determination, accept, or would she openly oppose, making Diane an outsider once again? In her anxiety, Diane tormented herself about her behavior towards Billy. Would she be too harsh in responding to his reproaches? Would her strength turn into authoritarianism, further damaging the already fractured relationships in this family? Diane understood that her every reaction, whether it was a frown or an explanation, could be interpreted in many ways, as an attempt to accommodate or as an ambition to dominate, as a desire to fit in or as an act of breaking with tradition. That morning, when Tracy and Ashley showed up at the Abbott residence, the atmosphere in the house was unusually tense. All eyes were on Diane. Perhaps never before had she felt so small amid the intertwining memories of the past and present. Tracy entered, gentle but no less sharp, her eyes scanning the changes in the house. Diane tried to stay calm, carefully explaining that she just wanted to breathe new life into her home, bringing a modern atmosphere while still preserving the family's spiritual values. But deep down, she clearly felt the undercurrents. Every word she said could be the spark that ignited a long-lasting argument, and just one misspoken word could cause all the hard work to go up in smoke. Tracy, after listening, gently talked about the importance of memories, of the memories attached to each item in the house. Ashley was firmer, reminding Diane that this house was not only hers, but also a symbol of the entire Abbott family, of the past, present and future. The atmosphere in the Abbott house had never been so tense. Billy, although still angry, could not deny that there were a few changes that made the house feel fresher. But for him, the greatest loss was the familiar feeling every time he stepped into the house, a feeling that was now fading under the new paint, modern paintings, and shiny furniture that Diane had brought. Kyle, witnessing all these conflicts, was even more tormented. He knew how hard his mother had worked to fit in, to be accepted, but at the same time he understood that tradition and memory were sacred to every member of the Abbott family. Perhaps, more than anyone, Kyle felt deeply that every change, no matter how good the reason, came at a price. As he struggled to choose between being on Audra's side or staying loyal to Jabot, Cal realized all the more what he could lose if he did not act carefully.